Good morning, all. Today we'll be discussing the pharmacotherapy of a very commonly encountered condition, that is hypertension. So, before starting with the drugs for the treatment of hypertension, let us see what is blood pressure. It is the lateral pressure exerted by blood in the walls of blood vessels. The dependents of blood pressure are arteriolar tone. Then the systolic pressure, that is contractility, intravascular volume, elasticity of blood vessels, and autonomic output, various hormones, and the neural activity. Now, how this blood pressure is regulated? Blood pressure actually is the product of cardiac output and peripheral vascular resistance. In both normal and hypertensive individuals, blood pressure is maintained by moment-to-moment regulation of cardiac output and peripheral vascular resistance. Now, for the diagnosis of hypertension, you need to take multiple measurements, maybe at home or at office, except in case of emergencies, that is hypertensive emergency or urgency. Now, for starting the drug therapy, we must first classify hypertension. What are the stages of hypertension? So, you all very well know the normal blood pressure. The systolic one is 120 or less than 120, and diastolic should be 80, less than 80 millimeters of mercury. Pre-hypertension, the systolic blood pressure ranges between 120 to 139 millimeters of mercury, whereas diastolic will be between 80 to 89 millimeters of mercury. Stage 1 hypertension is 140 to 159 millimeters of mercury. Diastolic is 90 to 99 millimeters of mercury. Stage 2 systolic is more than 160 and diastolic is more than 100 millimeters of mercury. Again, according to the etiology, we have the classification of hypertension. It is again primary hypertension or secondary hypertension, and there is hypertensive crisis, that is an emergency situation where you require prompt treatment for this condition. Primary hypertension, there is no as such cause for that is known. Secondary hypertension, there are various factors which are responsible for the development of secondary hypertension. And then there is hypertensive crisis. In that you have urgency and emergency. The blood pressure in both is more than 180-110 millimeters of mercury. The only thing is that whether there is acute end organ damage. In emergency, there is acute end organ damage. Again, there are targets that are given, like what should be the target systolic blood pressure or diastolic blood pressure. In a patient subgroup of more than 60 years, the target for systolic BP is less than 150. Then if the age is less than 60 years, target is less than 140, and if it is more than 18 years but with certain conditions like diabetes or CKD, it is less than 140. And for diastolic, in each subgroup it is less than 90 millimeters of mercury. This is again the same thing is been described here. Now the non-pharmacological management. This is also a very important management, that is it is very important that you also advise the patient about the non-pharmacological measures to be taken for the management of hypertension. So what are the non-pharmacological measures that should be advised? First is reduced sodium intake, that is You ask for reduced salt intake. No additional table salt is to be taken in your diet. Take low fat dairy products. Maintain your body weight. Quit smoking. Decrease alcohol consumption. Then to increase the physical activity and to have exercise. Now these are the various sites where the drugs are going to act and so as to reduce the blood pressure. So this is the vasomotor center. At vasomotor center, the drugs that are going to act are methyl dopa, clonidine, guanabens, guanfacine. These are the drugs which will act at vasomotor center to control the blood pressure. Then there is sympathetic ganglia, and where the drug which is going to act is trimethophan. There are sympathetic nerve terminals. At nerve terminals, the drugs are guanethidine, guanidrel, and reserpine. Then there are beta receptors of heart. The drugs that are going to act at beta receptors, these are propranolol and other beta blockers. Then you have alpha receptors which are located at blood vessels. The drugs that are going to act at the alpha receptors, these are prazosin and other alpha 1 blockers. At blood vessels, you have alpha 1 receptors. Okay. Then there are vascular smooth muscles. At vascular smooth muscle, the drugs that are going to act are hydrolazine, minoxidil, nitroprusside, diazoxide, verapamil, calcium channel blockers, and phenoldiazepam. Okay, these are going to reduce the total peripheral vascular resistance and they will decrease the blood pressure. Now again at the juxtaglomerular cells of kidney there are beta receptors. So once these receptors are blocked, decreased release of renin and it will help in reducing the blood pressure. The drugs that are going to act at beta receptors here are again propranolol and other beta blockers. Now coming to the kidney tubules, there are a class of drugs that are going to act at kidney tubules and which will help in reducing the blood pressure. These are the diuretics. Here you have thiazide diuretics, then you have loop diuretics and you have potassium sparing diuretics. Okay. So at kidney tubules you have diuretics which will reduce the blood volume. Okay. Now there are angiotensin receptors. Okay, these receptors are blocked and thereby you will have decreased blood pressure and the drugs are losartan angiotensin receptor blockers. Now again there is a role of angiotensin for 2 for the development of for the increased blood pressure. So basically angiotensinogen is acted upon by renin which gets converted to angiotensin 1 gets converted to angiotensin 2 and this is the enzyme AC, that is angiotensin converting enzyme, which is responsible for this conversion, and you have ACE inhibitors, they will block this conversion and thereby the formation of angiotensin 2 is decreased. This topic has already been covered in your renin angiotensin aldosterone system where you have studied this all the drugs in detail, all this mechanism of action, everything in detail. So now coming to the various classes of drugs which have already shown in the previous diagram. So these are the classes of drugs which are used as an antihypertensive agent. There are diuretics, in that you have thiazides and related agents. You have loop diuretics and potassium sparing diuretics. You have sympatholytic drugs, in that you have beta antagonist, alpha antagonist, mixed alpha beta antagonist, and there are centrally acting sympatholytic agents. The next class, that is calcium channel blockers. Then you have AC inhibitors, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, direct renin inhibitors, and a class of vasodilators. In vasodilators, again you have arteriolar dilator, and then you have arterial and venous dilator. That is the drugs which act at arteries as well as veins. So now this is the first class of antihypertensive agents, that is diuretics. In thiazides, you have chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, chlorothiazidone, metolazone, and many more drugs. You have loop diuretics, furosemide, bumetanide, ethiclinic acid, and torsemide. And you have potassium sparing diuretics, that is spironolactone, there is eplerenone, there is triamterene. Okay, so this is the glomeruli, the PCT, DCT, ascending limb. Okay, this is the descending limb, ascending limb, and DCT. Okay, what happens here is, what we are going to focus here is main on this loop diuretics and thiazide diuretics. These are the loop diuretics which are going to act at ascending limb, and it is going to inhibit this sodium potassium chloride co-transport. Thereby there is retention of sodium chloride and water in the tubule, and these drugs are most efficacious of diuretics. Okay. Next is DCT. At DCT, the drugs that are going to act are thiazide diuretics, which will inhibit reabsorption of sodium and chloride in the DCT, thereby resulting in retention of water in the tubule. And this is most commonly used diuretic for the treatment of hypertension. The next group is potassium sparing diuretics, in which you have spironolactone, amiloride, triamterene. Okay. In this, you have spironolactone, which is an aldosterone antagonist. Okay, it inhibits aldosterone-mediated reabsorption of sodium and secretion of K+. So, aldosterone is responsible for the reabsorption of sodium and secretion of K+. But now, this is being inhibited by spironolactone, which is an aldosterone antagonist. Therefore, there will be sparing of potassium. Okay, and release of sodium into the tubules. Okay. Next, amiloride and triamterene, they block sodium channels, epithelial sodium channels. Okay, and they also preserve potassium. Now, these agents can prevent loss of potassium that occurs with thiazide or loop diuretics. So, you may combine this potassium sparing diuretics with either your loop diuretics or thiazide diuretics, in which there is a lot of loss of potassium ions. Okay. Now the same thing here again is being described about the mechanism of action of thiazides, like how it is going to help in reducing the blood pressure. So thiazide diuretics, again, they will decrease sodium water retention, thereby reducing blood volume and thereby reducing cardiac output. It will also reduce peripheral resistance, and this is how it is going to reduce the blood pressure. Okay, so what are the uses? Furosemide, again, it is a loop diuretic. Remember, it's a high serum diuretic. It is used in cases of hypertension, but which are complicated by the chronic renal failure or congestive heart failure, or if the patient is resistant to a combination regime which is containing a thiazide diuretic. Okay, so dose is 20 milligram OD once a day orally. You give diuretics in the morning only. Okay. Next, hydrochlorothiazide, which is a thiazide group. It is again a mild antihypertensive. It is used in combination with other antihypertensives. There are a lot many classes of antihypertensives. Okay, and it will potentiate other antihypertensives. The starting dose is 12.5 milligram up to 50 milligrams per day. Again, it's once a day orally. Now, what are the adverse effects of diuretics? Basically, there is hypokalemia, because you know there is a lot of potassium is lost in the urine. So, which will lead to muscle pain and fatigue. Then there is hypoglycemia, there is inhibition of insulin release due to potassium depletion, there is precipitation of diabetes. There's hyperlipidemia. Then there is GIT problems like nausea, vomiting. Okay. CNS, there will be headache, giddiness, weakness, and there's hyperuricemia, which is because of inhibition of urate excretion. Okay. Next, beta blockers. So this we have finished with a diuretic group. Now we are starting with sympatholytic agents in that. This is beta blockers. In beta blockers, you have non-selective beta blockers and cardioselective. These things are already being covered in your autonomic nervous system. We'll just quickly go through all these drugs. Okay. So non-selective is propranolol, others nadolol, timolol, pinolol. Okay. Then you have cardioselective is metoprolol, atenolol, acebutolol, betaxolol, etc. Now, what is the mechanism of action? Mechanism of action, it decreases sympathetic outflow. Okay. It decreases heart rate, the force of contraction, and reduces cardiac output. It decreases renin release. Beta blockers are mainly useful in young hypertensives with increased renin, or if it's associated with angina, post-MI or migraine, or if patients are receiving some vasodilators. Vasodilators will cause reflex tachycardia. To counteract that tachycardia, beta blockers are given in combination. Again, the same thing is being described, the mechanism in this diagram. So here you can see there is beta 1 receptors on the heart get activated, due to which there is decreased cardiac output. Okay. And this beta receptors are also located, if you remember in the initial slides I've mentioned, there are beta 1 receptor in the juxtaglomerular apparatus of the kidney. So beta blockers will inhibit those beta receptors. Therefore, there is decreased renin. If the renin is decreased, naturally angiotensin 2 is decreased. Therefore, peripheral resistance is decreased. Again, there is decreased aldosterone, so the retention of sodium, water, and eventually there is decreased blood volume. And this is how it contributes to decrease in cardiac output and decrease in blood pressure. Okay. But there are several contraindications for the use of beta blockers. There is heart block, COPD, asthma, and peripheral vascular diseases. Okay. Next class is alpha adrenergic blockers. In alpha adrenergic blockers, again you have prazosin, trazosine, doxazosine, and again you have non-selective one, which are phentolamine, phenoxybenzamine. Now, among the selective one, prazosin is a prototype agent. Okay, terazosin, doxazosine are long-acting congeners. Alpha blockers basically they reduce arterial pressure by dilating the resistance and capacitance vessel. Okay, because they block the alpha 1 receptors located at blood vessels. So there is no vasoconstriction. There will be vasodilatation. Now, among in the non-selective one, you have phentolamine and phenoxybenzamine. Phentolamine, if you remember your ANS lectures, phentolamine is a reversible non-selective alpha antagonist, whereas phenoxybenzamine is irreversible alpha blocker. These are basically useful in diagnosis and treatment of pheochromocytoma, which is a tumor of adrenal medulla. Okay. Now, whenever prazosin is being prescribed, it can cause postural hypotension. So, basically, you start with a very low, with a very low dose of prazosin. You start with 0.5 milligram, and it is given at bedtime. And you can increase the dose up to 10 milligram daily. Okay, you have to titrate the dose. You can increase it up to 10 milligram daily. The other problem with prazosin is fluid retention in monotherapy. There can be headache, dry mouth, weakness, okay, blurred vision, rash, drowsiness. So these are some of the points that need to be considered whenever you give prazosin to the patient for controlling the blood pressure. Next class is combined alpha and beta adrenergic blockers. In this you have carvedilol and labetalol. They act at alpha 1, beta 2 receptors. Okay, these are blocked. Carvedilol, its main use is again in systolic heart failure, where it has been shown to improve the outcome. It will preserve the left ventricular function and reduce mortality. Labetalol, the main use of labetalol is seen in gestational hypertension and hypertensive emergencies. The next class from the sympatholytic group, that is centrally acting sympatholytics. So these are basically alpha 2 adrenoceptor agonist. There are two drugs in this. There's alpha methyl dopa and clonidine. Now clonidine, it is a highly lipid soluble, crosses blood-brain barrier. It stimulates basically alpha 2A receptors in vasomotor center. So once it stimulates this alpha 2A receptors, what is going to happen? It decreases the sympathetic outflow from vasomotor center. Okay. So once the sympathetic outflow is decreased, naturally the neurotransmitters, the release of neurotransmitters is reduced, thereby leading to decreased heart rate, cardiac output, the peripheral vascular resistance, and eventually the blood pressure is also reduced. Now, what are the adverse effects? Adverse effects with clonidine are dryness of mouth, sedation, bradycardia, sudden withdrawal will lead to withdrawal symptoms. Okay. Then there is depression, salt and water retention, rebound hypertension, and supersensitivity. This is not frequently used because of tolerance and withdrawal. It is very rarely used, maybe with diuretics. Uses: these are used in cases of opioid withdrawal, in cases of diabetic neuropathy to control the diarrhea in diabetic neuropathy. It is used as a pre-anesthetic medication and in prophylaxis of migraine. Now the next drug from this centrally acting sympatholytics is alpha methyl dopa. Alpha methyl dopa gets converted to alpha methyl noradrenaline, which acts on alpha 2 receptors in brain, and again it will cause inhibition of adrenergic discharge in medulla, thereby fall in the peripheral resistance and fall in BP. The difference between clonidine and alpha methyl dopa is that clonidine will act directly at the receptors, whereas alpha methyl dopa is a prodrug. It needs to be get converted to alpha methyl noradrenaline. Now the adverse effects are cognitive impairment, postural hypotension, then there is immunological changes, then there is lupus-like syndrome, leukopenia, altered liver function, this hypothermia, reduced mental acuity. It is not used therapeutically now except in hypertension during pregnancy. Okay, because there are many drugs which cannot be used in pregnancy. They have some teratogenic effects, some adverse effects. So yes, this drug alpha methyl dopa, labetalol, this can be used in hypertension during pregnancy. Now coming towards calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers, basically first of all, let's see the classification. It's phenylalkylamine. This according to the chemical structures is the verapamil, benzthiazepine, diltiazem, then you have dihydropyridines. In dihydropyridines again you have the classification of these dihydropyridines, that is DHPs, according to their duration of action. In ultra short acting, you have clevidipine, short acting, nifedipine, nicardipine, nimodipine, intermediate are lacidipine, lercanidipine, nitrodipine, long acting are felodipine, amlodipine, and benidipine. Okay. Now these are generally divided into dihydropyridines and non-dihydropyridines. Dihydropyridines, these are the um drugs, okay, like ultra short, short, intermediate, long, and phenylalkylamine, that is verapamil and diltiazem. This comes under the class of non-dihydropyridines called as NDHPs, and dihydropyridines, these are DHPs. Okay. Now the mechanism of action, calcium channel blockers, they will block L type of calcium channels. They will decrease the entry of calcium into cardiac and smooth muscle cells, and they will decrease the myocardial contractility, heart rate and conduction velocity. They cause vascular smooth muscle relaxation. Okay. So this is the mechanism of action. Now, as I've already mentioned, you basically classify calcium channel blockers as DHPs and non-DHPs. There's slight difference in the action of these calcium channel blockers. As far as non-DHPs are concerned, they have more action at the nodes. Like you can see here, it acts at SA node and AV node. Okay, and they decrease the contractility. Whereas your DHPs, that is dihydropyridines, they act at the vessels, okay, peripheral arteries, okay, and here the arterioles, okay. So it is basically acts on the vessels, much more action at the vessels. Again, the same thing here again is described, the comparative action. So DHPs, these are basically vasodilators, okay. As these are vasodilators, you know that it will result in potential reflex increase in the contractility, heart rate and O2 demand. Okay. Whereas non-DHPs, these are heart rate moderating. They act at the nodes. Okay. They will cause the vasodilatation also at the peripheral and coronary vessels, and they have decreased ionotropism. Okay. Now, these are the hemodynamic dynamic effects of calcium channel blockers. Here, basically, DHPs and non-DHPs are being compared. Again, verapamil diltiazem from one class and nifedipine as a DHP. Okay, so here again you can see that the vasodilation or effect on the vessels is much more by the nifedipine, that is the DHPs, whereas there is the rate, heart rate and the conduction is decreased by verapamil and diltiazem, okay, which are non-DHPs. Again, the pharmacokinetics, they have good oral absorption. You can see the bioavailability. They have good protein bound percentage, and these are the elimination half-life of these various drugs. From this you can make out that amlodipine, the elimination half-life is 30 to 50 hours, and amlodipine is it's a longer acting dihydropyridine. Okay, you can see the elimination half-life. Now the therapeutic uses of calcium channel blockers. Yes, hypertension is one of the very important use of calcium channel blockers. Amlodipine, which is a longer acting calcium channel blocker, is preferred drug. Then you have ischemic heart diseases, angina pectoris, then vasospastic angina, unstable angina, and you have supraventricular arrhythmias. For arrhythmias, verapamil and diltiazem, these are used because they have anti-arrhythmic properties. Then there's peripheral vascular diseases. Again, in that you will use this various DHPs like nifedipine, felodipine, diltiazem. This can be used. Nifedipine patches are also available. Transdermal patches are also available. Then for migraine prophylaxis and even for nocturnal leg cramps, calcium channel blockers can be used. Now, what are the adverse effects? Verapamil causes nausea, constipation, bradycardia, okay, aggravation of conduction defects because it has much more activity at even at the nodes. Diltiazem also has similar side effect profile but to a lesser extent. DHPs, they show side effects like nausea, headache, drowsiness, palpitation, hypotension. Then there is flushing and there is ankle edema because they have vasodilatory properties. Okay, so these all side effects are seen with the calcium channel blockers. Now coming to ACE inhibitors, you have already gone through this topic, that is ACE inhibitors and ARBs. We'll just very quickly go through these slides. ACE inhibitors to mention captopril, enalapril, fosinopril, ramipril, they act by inhibiting the enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, and there is a vasodilation and decrease in blood pressure. The same thing is being described here by diagrammatic representation. You can see angiotensinogen is acted upon by renin to get converted to angiotensin 1. Then there is ACE which will convert angiotensin 1 to 2. And then this angiotensin 2, basically what actions are produced by angiotensin 2 is vasoconstriction, then there is retention of sodium and water. Okay, and so here these are the drugs which are shown which will help in reducing blood pressure. You can see here is the first group here is renin inhibitors, then there are AC inhibitors, then there are ARBs, then there are aldosterone receptor antagonists, and this is the mechanism by which the blood pressure is reduced. So decreased output, sympathetic output, there is vasodilation, and there is retention of sodium and water. Decreased retention of sodium and water, and blood pressure is decreased. Okay. Now these are angiotensin receptor blockers. These are the drugs like losartan, valsartan, telmisartan, olmesartan. They will block the effects of angiotensin 2 by blocking the receptors of angiotensin 2, that is AT1 receptors. Okay, so there will be vasodilation, decreased sympathetic stimulation, and decreased aldosterone release. Adverse effects you very well know, but just to enlist them is dry cough, skin rash, fever, altered taste, is hyperkalemia. Then there is renal impairment. It's contraindicated in bilateral renal artery stenosis. There's angioedema and teratogenic effects. Therefore, ACE inhibitors or ARBs, they should be avoided in pregnancy. Now, renin inhibitor, aliskiren, but it is not widely used. The antihypertensive effects are similar to ACE inhibitors or ARBs. Side effect that is seen with aliskiren is diarrhea. And why it is not widely used? Because there is a reactive renin secretion after its continued use. Therefore, this is limiting its effectiveness. Okay. Now coming to another class of drugs that are used for the treatment of hypertension, these are vasodilators. Okay. In vasodilators, the first drug is that is hydrolazine. In vasodilators, basically you have seen there is arterial dilators and arterial plus venous dilators. So hydrolazine is a direct arterial dilator. Can be given orally. It causes reflex tachycardia. Then there are palpitations, sodium and water retention. Now these side effects or these actions which are produced because of vasodilators can be countered by giving a diuretic or beta blocker. Like for reflex tachycardia, you will give a beta blocker. For sodium and water retention, you can give a diuretic. Now the other side effects, these are like hypotension, flushing, angina, MI, coronary steal phenomenon, and lupus erythematosus. These are seen as a side effects. Okay. The next drug is minoxidil. Now, minoxidil is a potassium channel opener. It causes hyperpolarization of vascular smooth muscles. Okay, it will cause vasodilation and it will decrease blood pressure. Now minoxidil, one of the action of minoxidil, it promotes hair growth. So it is used in some topical preparations for alopecia because it promotes hair growth, okay, which is a side effect actually of minoxidil. It has been used topically for that reason. Next is diazoxide. Again, it is a potassium channel opener. Diazoxide is given by rapid IV injection and it is used for the treatment of hypertensive emergencies. Now, sodium nitroprusside is also one of very important drug which is a arteriolar and venodilator. Okay, so it's a rapidly and consistently acting vasodilator. It relaxes both resistance and capacitance vessels, and it reduces the total peripheral resistance and cardiac output, okay, because it decreases the venous return. Now, unlike hydrolazine, it produces decrease in cardiac work and there is no reflex tachycardia, which is seen with other vasodilators, arterial dilators. Okay, it improves ventricular function in heart failure by reducing preload. Now, as far as mechanism of action is concerned, RBCs, they convert nitroprusside to nitric oxide, and this nitric oxide later on causes relaxation. Once you study the nitrates, you will come to know in detail the mechanism of action, how this nitric oxide is responsible for causing vascular relaxation, that is vasodilatation. Okay. Now the uses, sodium nitroprusside is used in hypertensive emergencies. It's a 50 milligram is added to 500 ml of saline. It is infused slowly, okay, with a very minimal dose, and then you'll titrate with the response. Now it's very important that sodium nitroprusside, it is covered whenever you give it by infusion. You cover the bottle with black paper, okay, because it has a reaction with the light, okay. So you have to cover it with black paper, okay. Now what are the adverse effects? Adverse effects are because of cyanides, okay, that is thiocyanate. So that which are palpitation, pain in abdomen, disorientation, psychosis, weakness, and lactic acidosis. So these are the adverse effects which are seen with sodium nitroprusside. This is because of the reactions that take place, okay. And the basic thing is thiocyanate which is formed. Now coming to hypertensive emergencies. If you remember in the previous slides, I've mentioned what is emergency, what is urgency. Okay, if there is a target end organ damage, if it's and the blood pressure is quite high, more than 180, 110, and with associated end organ damage, you have to very quickly, promptly treat that patient. Okay, so what should be your goal while treating this emergency conditions? Your goal is to decrease the BP by not more than 25%, okay, within initial hour, that is within initial 1 to 2 hours, okay. It is not like that if you give aggressively the medications and you will bring the BP to a normal value. No, this should not happen. So it should be decrease the BP by not more than 25% of that value within 1 to 2 hours. Okay, and then later on you can slowly decrease, keep the blood pressure, get the blood pressure back to lower values in next 4 to 6 hours. Okay, now why it is so? Because rapid normalization of blood pressure is avoided as as the patient is in chronic hypertension, and if the patient is in chronic hypertension, it is associated with some autoregulatory changes. Okay, that is why it should not be done so aggressively to immediately get down the blood pressure to a normal value. Now these all are the drugs that are used in hypertensive emergencies. Now this is sodium nitroprusside. It's given in a dose of 20 to 300 microgram per minute. Dose titration and monitoring is required. But now it is not as such the first line of drug. It is reserved for patients of aortic dissection. Okay. So the other drugs that are used in hypertensive emergencies is clevidipine. Clevidipine, if you remember, it is an ultra short acting calcium channel blocker. It will very rapidly bring down the blood pressure. It is given in a dose of 1 to 2 milligram per hour IV infusion. The next drug that can be used is from the nitrates. Okay, it is 5 to 20 microgram per minute. Nitrates will be covered in your angina in detail. Okay, so it's used in case of angina, MI, left ventricular failure, or in cardiac surgery. That is nitrates. The next group is esmolol. Esmolol is again a very ultra short acting beta blocker. It is acts very rapidly. It is given in a dose of 0.5 milligram per kg bolus, and then you will give the infusion. Okay, so initially you give the bolus dose, then you give the infusion, which is given in a dose of 50 to 200 microgram per kg per minute. Now this is useful in reducing cardiac work. Okay, it's a beta blocker. Naturally, it is going to reduce cardiac work. The next drug that is used is phentolamine. Phentolamine is a non-selective reversible alpha blocker. Okay, it is used in case of pheochromocytoma, which is a tumor of adrenal medulla. There is a Cheese reaction and clonidine withdrawal. Okay, it is given in a dose of 1 to 4 milligram intravenously. Okay. And the next drug is labetalol. Labetalol, it is a mixed acting drug. If you remember labetalol and carvedilol, okay, alpha and beta blocker. So it acts at alpha receptor, beta 1 receptors, and beta 2 receptors. It is given in a dose of 2.5 to 25 microgram per kg per minute by infusion. Okay, so labetalol is used in during hypertension in pregnancy to reduce the blood pressure. You can also use alpha methyl dopa, can be used here in hypertension in pregnancy. A calcium channel blocker can be used in hypertension in pregnancy. So these are few drugs that can be used for the treatment of hypertension during pregnancy. The only caution is with calcium channel blocker for hypertension in pregnancy, because before labor you have to stop that drug, otherwise there will be relaxation of the muscles. Okay. Now these are the guidelines which are given by JNC. Like beta blockers are no longer considered as first line drugs. Okay. Then what are the first line drugs that are available? Is thiazide diuretics, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, and calcium channel blockers. Okay. Now rest of the drugs, these are called later line drugs, as blood pressure should be controlled by first line drugs individually or in combination. Now ACE inhibitors and ARBs should not be given simultaneously to a person. Okay. There is quite hyperkalemia. Okay, already you are blocking the synthesis of angiotensin 2. Then why you need to give the receptor blockers? And there is risk of hyperkalemia also. Okay, so these two drugs should not be given simultaneously to a person. Now, irrespective of ethnic background, ARBs and ACE inhibitors should be used as first choice drugs in CKD patients. And for African patients without CKD, thiazides and calcium channel blockers should be preferred. Okay, so these are the JNC 8 guidelines. So this was all about the pharmacotherapy of hypertension. I hope you have understood the various classes of drugs and what are the criterias for giving the drugs, okay, and how you manage the patient of hypertension. Okay, thank you.